I'm going to video a second turning of a large heavy oak wet bowl blank that I had previously used for a demo for the Woodcut bowl saver system. So I've got a couple of small bowls and I've got the big outside bowl. That's the big outside bowl I'm going to try and return today. It's been wrapped in cling film for probably 6 months, so it's sopping wet still inside. I've forgotten I'd got it, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I previously turned it using record power, very large jaws with about a I don't know, yeah, 85mm tenon on it. So I've got some mould on it as well. Can still see the grip marks though where the deep teeth were, so I'll line up the jaws with where it previously had been. Got this, it's obviously heavier on one side because it's spinning round to the wet bottom side. Right, so I'll spin it up. Standing out the firing iron, I've kept the plough stock in place just whilst I get this trued up. That's about 600 revs. So I'm just shaping the outside now. I'm going to make some sort of little pedestal, I think, although I've got to be careful not to make it too thick, because the intention is for this to be dried out again, and if I make the base too thick in comparison to the inside, then it'll probably split. When I was initially turning this, I thought I'd put a detail, a band on the outside, as you can see there. I later changed my mind and removed it, but just for completeness, you can see that it's there, and I'm just doing some shear cuts with a negative rake scraper just to try and refine the surface a bit. It's a bit wet and plucky, but getting reasonable finish. And then some shear scrapes with the lower wing of the bowl gouge, just going from small to large with supported fibres, just to get a bit of a finishing cut at the bottom as well. I've now turned the headstock at an angle to make access easier and adjusted the tool rest accordingly. So I'm just going to do some material removal on the inside. I'm going to use a mixture of bowl gouges and hollowing tools, because it's quite deep. This is about 12 inches deep and about 14 inches in diameter. So I'm now going to use the Pro-Forme, Woodcut Pro-Forme deep hollowing tool. I've set the tool rest up so that the tool can be presented horizontally with the tip of the tool at the centre of the bowl. This is extremely good for hogging out quite a large amount of wood, particularly when the wood itself is quite wet. The shielded cutter is quite good at avoiding the ring cutter clogging, but it does still clog, particularly when the wood is wet, because you get like a sawdust puree in there, so it has to be cleared out every now and again. You can do push cuts and you can do pull cuts. You do have to be careful, because you can successfully take out a large amount of material in one go. I think the slow motion shows how effective the tool is at removing a large amount of wood, getting some nice streamers, and it's equally effective on a push cut or a pull cut. The shielded cutter is great at cutting out large amounts of material on the side of the bowl. It's not quite so easy to pick up a cut right at the centre point because the shield stops the cutter getting a good grip on the wood. But once you pick up the cut, away you go. And here I'm doing some like push and pull cuts, creating sort of like ridges, because that just seemed easier to hog out the large amounts of material. It doesn't need to be delicate at this stage, it's just about removing about 3/8 of an inch of material off that bowl rim. And as you can see, every now and again the cutter does clag up a bit, and occasionally I remove it and poke at it with a bradawl to clear it out completely. The oak looks to have some lovely figuring in the centre. It's still very wet too. So in order to maintain tool support, I put on my large curved heavyweight bowl tool rest. In order to pick up the cut at the centre, it's quite helpful to use the far right hand side of the cutter to get the initial cut right at the centre, because that is not fully shielded by the shield. Without that, you find you're rubbing away and you can't really get the cut to bite. Did a quick scrape at this point using the Simon Hope negative rake scraper system, but didn't film a lot of it. And then just to see what it's likely to come out like, I've gone over it with 80 grit and a bit of 120. It clags up the paper because it's quite wet, but it's just nice to make sure that I've got rid of the bulk of the tool marks, because you never know, when it dries out I might decide to leave it at the thickness that it is.
Flagging up too much, it really is too wet to finish.
So I'm just trimming up the top face now, and I'm going to put 3 little beads on it using a Sorby beading tool, just as a bit of a detail. I don't use the beading tools very often. Tend to find that I pluck the top of the bead off if I'm not careful, but you just basically push it in, waggle it a little bit side to side to form the bead, and then move from one bead to the next, putting the left hand side of the tool in the right hand side of the first bead that you formed, and just go around doing it a step at a time. You have the bevel facing downwards. It's a bit daft really doing the beading at this point, but I thought I'd give it a go because I don't do it very often. I mean, it may all get turned off when the bulb comes out of the under bench area in a few months' time. It may be warped and look a horrible mess, but it's an opportunity to practice with a tool that I don't use very often. Still not quite sure I'm doing it right though. So there we have it. I did in fact decide to leave some of the band around the top. I just dressed it off a bit off camera. Now just marking up where jaws 1 and 4 are so that I can rechuck it later on. I just quickly sploshed on some finishing oil to help the surface a little whilst it dries, and there it is. I'll see you again in a few months after I unwrap you from the brown paper stuck in the corner at the back of the bench.